Hello everybody, welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything rolls around Fantasy Premier League. My name is Suj.
And my name is James.
Hasn't revolved around Fantasy Premier League during the international break, and nor does today's People's Poll. But the FPL stuff is coming later in the week, once we get ready for Game Week 9.
Once you decide what transfer to make.
I've made mine, mate.
Runs and heights.
Made mine, mate.
Yeah, I know you have.
What happened to Nathan Patterson? Is he really fucked or something?
We don't know yet.
Oh, fair play.
Is that another problem you might have?
Well, he's third on the bench. And I don't even think I've had a sub come off the bench yet this season so far. So, no, to be honest with you. We're not talking about FPL, though, today. We have another bunch of topics that you put out for the People's Poll.
Yes, People's Poll, it was going to be England-focused. It is England-focused. It's obviously very topical over the weekend that's just gone. Very important to say that this poll was put out and finalised prior to England's enthralling 3-3 draw with the Germans last night. There were three options in the poll. One was measuring success. Are England victims of own recent success, used loosely, but in terms of doing better of final tournament placings, semi-final and final? Are we judging England now solely on must-win a trophy? Was one option. Another option was on Gareth Southgate. Is it time to step aside? Thoughts on that, just briefly?
Nah, not this close.
I know you're very supportive of Southgate.
Not this close to the tournament.
No, I agree, and certainly after last night, I think the mood is a little bit better today because at least it showed character in that second half. For 2-0 down, I'm thinking, I tell you what, if this goes like 4-0 here,
problem.
You've got a serious mutiny going on here and a really long 6 weeks or so going into the World Cup. But at least it ended on a little bit of a positive, not quite as high as it should have because of the late equaliser. But it was a bit better last night. It papered over cracks, but I also think some of the performances recently haven't been as bad as what's been suggested. In the same way, last night's performance wasn't as good as some have suggested. Quite often, it's a halfway house. The winner of the poll, quite comfortably, is for us to have a discussion on England's final 26-man squad. Not necessarily what we would pick, but what we think it's going to be. Can I just throw one question to you on Southgate? Do you think if England sacked Gareth Southgate today and appointed Thomas Tuchel for the World Cup only, England would have a better chance of winning it?
Yeah.
That's interesting, isn't it?
I think with Southgate now, and a lot of people have mentioned it in squad selections and players that are getting called up and not, that he likes to go back to his favourites and people that have been tried and trusted in the past, like Harry Maguire probably, who aren't in form for their clubs. Thomas Tuchel wouldn't give a fuck. He'd literally be in there to win the tournament and would purely base it on merit to win the tournament, and tactically he'd be just about winning. Whereas I think it's inevitable. It's not Gareth Southgate's fault that he's been in charge for that long and now has certain biases and certain opinions on certain things, but it does affect your decision making, and some people are arguing the case that it's affecting his decision making negatively because he's picking players that shouldn't be picked and so on. So, yeah, I think we would stand a bit of a better chance. I think he'd just be more ruthless about it.
I just think when you put it down on black and white like that, I think almost everybody would be of the same opinion, even if you're very much a Southgate loyalist, would be, oh my God, you'd right fancy our chances, wouldn't you? And isn't that the end game here?
Yeah, I mean, with international football, it's just winning tournaments.
Is it though? That's part way I put it in the poll yesterday. Like, how important is that? If England play really well in the World Cup, win all three group games, win their last 16 game, and then get beat by France because France are a better team, I would certainly say so at the moment, in the quarterfinals, which is the path we would potentially be on if both teams win the group, then how do we feel about that? Like, what's the reaction to that?
I don't know. I said to you before.
No, but that's my point. Is that failure based on we got to final and semi-final of the last two tournaments? Because part of the argument is a lot of people will say with Southgate, they'll say, well, he's got to a final and semi-final, judged on England's last 50 years, and quite rightly, what do you expect? But then to spin the narrative, they'll be, well, look at who you've played. England only beat nowhere near the best Germany of the last 50 years in the last 16 in the Euros. Otherwise, didn't beat a big nation to get to those points. And as soon as came up to a superior team in Croatia or Italy, didn't win. So what side of the fence do you sit on? Are England's achievements because of luck of draw, or are they part down to the manager? And has it changed the way we view what we want?
A bit of both. A bit of both. I think it's interesting with England that say we have a Premier League debate and we're talking about our clubs, and we can sit down the pub and have a couple of pints and have an argument where we all support different teams. And England, we all support the same team, and yet we can still have the same level of debate and disagreement and everything about it. And so I find like it's really polar. I'm surprised.
You'll also get biases coming, won't they?
Club biases for sure. I just find it really polarized. I find it interesting how polarizing opinions on England are when we're supporting the same team. But you do get that within a club environment as well. I do get that. We have to be realistic about our expectations. I think one of the biggest frustrations is that we definitely have the players that could win an international tournament.
Do we though?
You look at the quality of the players that we have. We probably are lacking in defence, I would say, as a centre-back maybe. Defensive midfield. I think our midfield creative is strong.
Creative?
Striker, we have one of the best.
As in players who can play in pockets and wide positions and stuff, yes. But central midfield, I mean, it's like a graveyard at the moment. And the two who played last night are absolutely fine, by the way.
Yeah, but if you had
the depth
Rice,
is
Bellingham...
Yeah, that's fine. And by the way, I think
Rice and Phillips have played well previously. I know Phillips had injury problems.
I think a lot of the problems that the back three had last night were because of the midfield. And I'm not blaming that on Rice or Bellingham, by the way. I'm blaming that on numbers, sheer numbers in that area.
Almost just thinking about Phillips, I'd forgot that he signed for City.
Well, he's a massive loss for England if he's not available, even if he wasn't going to be first choice.
Well, I mean, he's not playing. He's been injured, I get it, but it's difficult.
We'd certainly be competitive. We're going to look at options, obviously, in midfield as well as other areas for England for the tournament.
I don't really get hyped up about watching England or getting involved with the international team, primarily because I think we've been through this cycle where the closer we get to a tournament, the country always goes through the same cycle of the closer we get, the more we start playing Three Lions and it's coming home and all that, and we think we're going to win it, and then we end up in disappointment, and then the world is a disaster, and we need to sack the manager, and so on and so on. And then 2 years later, we get close to a tournament, and suddenly the song starts playing again, and we think it's coming home, and we get all hyped up, and then we go through the same cycle where it's like maybe we should be a little bit more realistic about what won't happen. I mean, I don't even know what the odds are on England to win the World Cup, but it's not going to be good, is it?
Third favourites with the bookies, but you have to obviously bear in mind that's weight of money, and they'll always underprice England for what's realistic in this country anyway. So, but yeah, it was interesting listening to what Luis Enrique who's obviously in charge of Spain, was saying the other day. He was like, no, England will be one of the big favourites at the tournament. I don't know if that's someone's put a question in front of him and he's got to answer it legitimately, or whether he was talking about teams are in the favourites in terms of context and has mentioned England. It is worth saying that when you look around, particularly the other European nations at the moment, none of them are playing particularly well.
Spain lost. I was in Seville on Saturday.
Spain lost to Switzerland.
I didn't know, before I left, I didn't know they were playing in Switzerland in Seville. And then Chancer, Dan, messaged me and said that the game was going on. I did suggest to my wife that we go and watch it, but I didn't get the green light on that.
Got it.
We didn't go to Spain, Switzerland in the end. But then Spain lost. I don't know what the score was. What was the score? 1-0
Spain lost at home to Switzerland at the weekend. France have won 1 in 6. I'm going to credit one of our patrons, Sam O'Sullivan, who posted this. France have won 1 in 6. Germany won in 5. This is prior to yesterday's, so that's even worse now. So that's 1 in 6 for Germany. England haven't won in 6. Spain 2 wins in 5. Belgium won 3 games in 6. Italy haven't qualified. Holland are doing okay at the moment. They obviously won their Nations League group.
Nico, what's Portugal saying?
Portugal doing okay. They had a great result at the weekend.
Come on.
Portugal got a strong side. What I'm saying is...
Italy are probably doing well and they ain't fucking going to the World Cup.
No, but of the nations, just say France, Germany, Spain, who have won tournaments in the last 20 years or so, none of them are in good form either.
No.
There's Brazil and Argentina are going to be stronger than they have been for a while, but it does feel quite open. It's countries like Switzerland and Serbia are coming into this tournament in good form. They've both landed in Brazil's group, by the way. who I think are two teams to keep an eye on during the tournament. Anyway, it's really open. I don't think anybody feels overly positive from an England perspective at the moment.
No.
Not those who are watching the games. No. And I get the lack of interest. This Nations League is bollocks, isn't it?
Oh.
But it is still, as much as we criticise it, it's better than friendlies, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I was looking at England's results last night and who's played for the national team since the Euros. We played Switzerland in March. And you know what my memory's like? I have no recollection of that game taking place or anything. Literally nothing. No recollection of that game even happening.
Mad.
And we won. Who
scored for Switzerland? Stefan Honcho.
I don't know. Harry Kane scored a penalty, as he often does.
Yeah, 51 goals now. You've looked at this 26-man squad. You've put all the players, listed all the players that have played for England. And I think with a 26-man squad, there's 18, 19 that write their own name on in the squad list, maybe even 20. And then the rest are up for debate. Then we'll decide. Well, Southgate will decide, to be honest with you, what he thinks.
I think the first important point to get across is, I think, one of the things we always anticipate going into these tournaments is, someone will have a run of games and they'll get a last-minute call-up. Like, I can't foresee that happening. Dominic Solanke's big talk in the FPL Twitter community at the moment. Like, if Dominic Solanke scores 12 goals between now and the World Cup, he's still not getting a call-up. I cannot see anybody like that new getting a call-up. There's a couple of names in the midfield area that I'm going to mention who I don't think it's impossible but would need a literal stripping catastrophe, i.e. no Rice, no Bellingham. Like, what are we going to do if that happens, for example? But otherwise, like, I don't think we can expect
surprises.
Like suddenly Max Kilman's not getting called up now, for example.
No.
Like, he's Adam Webster at Brighton.
No.
There's nothing like that now that's going to happen. Like it or not, Harry Maguire almost definitely is going to be part of the squad. So I went back and traced over all the names that have played for England during the Euros last summer, and obviously since, be it in friendlies, anything. And I think based on what we've seen over the last two games as well, and the fact that Southgate's gone with a real core of players, it wasn't like he picked 11 on Friday and 11 Monday night. You have to remember, and a lot of people are calling last night saying, you need to see this player. Like, all of us wanted to see Tony play at some point. But if he's seen Tony in training and decided, you know what, he's probably not going, let's be realistic about it. If Kane's fit at the tournament, Kane's going to probably play every game at the tournament. And we'll even likely use people like Sterling or Foden to play in that position. We're not going to take 4 number 9s, for example. I can't even see him taking 3. I think he'd literally probably just take one other with Kane, which looks like, as Tony didn't even get on the pitch, I think we probably have to assume that'll be Tammy Abraham at the moment. I reckon there are 17 names who, as long as they're fit, are in. And the rest, there's a little bit of a debate over 9 spots, but I think even a lot of them are probably quite locked down. So I think Pickford and Pope now look like certainties. And it's very difficult to foresee Ramsdale not being the third goalkeeper. I know Pope obviously had a difficult night last night. I was surprised that he was picked. Not last night. I was surprised he was picked against Italy in the first place, which I don't have a problem with. Ramsdale certainly didn't cover himself in glory when we got heavily beaten by Hungary at Molineux in the summer. But he is the closest stylistically to Jordan Pickford. It was interesting following the timeline on Twitter last night, the amount of people who've, probably the same people have really given Pickford a lot of stick over the last few years, calling for him back, watching Nick Pope's distribution under pressure last night. So I think, look, Pope, and I realise he's particularly on the third goal, he's let himself down a bit, but he's solid as, really.
Yeah,
he's a decent goalkeeper to take. But Pickford's going to be number 1 as long as he's fit, and he may even play for Everton as early as this weekend. I think Pickford, Pope, Ramsdale. Pickford and Pope are definites. Ramsdale, I'm pretty sure, will be the third. Only other keepers under consideration would be Dean Henderson, was obviously in the squad. And I guess should any of the front 3 not make it, he'll go at this stage as in position. The only other goalkeepers who've had a look in is Sam Johnston, who's not in the Crystal Palace team at the moment. And obviously Fraser Forster was in the squad in March, when he was playing regularly for Southampton, but is obviously now only understudy to Hugo Lloris. But I think if we lost 2 at this stage, one of them, Johnston or Forster, just again because Southgate knows it, he'll go to one of them.
Yep.
I imagine. I can't think where else he's gonna look at this stage, to be honest. Defensively, so I've tried to break this down into thinking that he's primarily, certainly in the big games, going to want to play a back three. It's worth saying England have played a lot of games in 2022. It doesn't feel like it with a back four, and we may well see that in quite a few of the group games. But I think in the bigger games, he clearly wants to go with the back three, which I understand because of certain weaknesses defensively, particularly. So I think Cole Walker definitely goes.
Yep.
If we assume at the moment right-sided centre-back, primarily can obviously cover right back in a four. John Stones will go.
Yep.
But obviously hamstring injury last night, which if it's bad and he's out of the tournament, I promise you is a catastrophe. Because he's England's best centre-back. As far as I'm concerned, he's got to play. He can play centre of a three, right of three, left of three, left or right in a back four. He's got the most adaptability of all of England's centre-backs. And he's also the best in terms of carrying the ball out from the back. It would be a disaster if he doesn't make it. If he makes it. I think Eric Dyer, having started the 2 games, is definitely going to be in the squad.
Yep.
There's a debate to be had about maybe Stones could play that anchor role. I think Dyer's probably jumped above Connor Cody in terms of first choice. So I think Dyer will be in the squad now. And as I've been saying for a long time to you, he's been great for Tottenham for a good sort of 13, 14 months now.
No one would argue with that.
Maguire's going to go. Like it or not. I think I wouldn't take him, personally.
Yeah, me neither.
I just think that last night became one too many, and I think, to be honest, I think Southgate did the right thing by leaving him on the pitch. So I think if you're taking him off, he would have got booed, and I think you're shooting him badly. The scrutiny on him, everything he does, he's well over the top, and it comes partly through being captain or was captain of Manchester United. And the reality is, bar one idiotic game against Denmark, not in the Euros, in a Nations League game prior to the Euros, where he got sent off, and he was in a really bad period then, and that's going back 2 years, by the way. Other than that game, he's largely played quite well for England. The system, the back three, protects him in terms of he's got tightness of left wing back to him, central centre back. That playing on the left suits him fine. The only problem you get is what happens like last night, whereas he gets forced onto his left side. He's got no confidence in his left foot, and he's ended up giving the ball away. Last night, he had a nightmare. He had a nightmare period in that 15, 20 minutes where ideally it's get him off the pitch. But I think Southgate did the right thing just leaving him out there. Most people, I think, wouldn't take him, but he's going to go. There's no point even arguing about it. And he's probably going to start for England, I should imagine, during the tournament, unless last night really changed Southgate's mind. But the fact that he hasn't properly looked at the two probably alternatives to Maguire, Tomori and Gueye, other than in games in the summer, and I don't think either overly impressed, suggests that Maguire will definitely be in the squad. I guess Gueye's probably got favouritism over Tomori at the moment, but there's no lock on that. What I don't know, and I'm not one of these who's going to blag and kind of follow the, Tomori should be in the team. Most people who've watched a lot more of AC Milan and Italian football than myself think that Tomori is arguably England's best defender and should be in the team. I'm not going to tell anybody that that's wrong. All I can say is I haven't seen enough of him at AC Milan. When he played for England in the summer, ironically, on the left side of Harry Maguire in a back four, I wasn't overly impressed.
I think it's very it's just really unfair to judge players on 1 and 2 performances when they come in.
Of course it is.
And people are like, well, yeah. I just think you have to go very much on club form more than you can.
Well, Gueye played the home game against Hungary, which was a disaster, and he wasn't alone in having a disaster. But he seems to have... The fact that Gueye was in the squad last night and not Tomori makes you think that he's made that choice.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that's a lock. I would say Walker, Stones, Dyer, Maguire are definitely going to go. I think Cody will go with Dyer because I think that's kind of like for a back three. And I think Cody's doing well at Everton at the moment. It's worth saying Evertonians love what they've seen from him so far. The leadership side of it, in terms of on and off the pitch, Southgate values incredibly highly. I'd be really surprised if Connor Cody didn't go, but I don't think it's 100% because of Dyer's performances. I think Gueye would be kind of 6th centre-back, if you will. I think ahead of Tomori at the moment. personally, if it was me, by the way, I have no understanding why Ben White was not in the last squad. I don't get that.
And now that he's playing right back, he's kind of showing a bit of versatility, right-sided centre-half in a 3 that he could do if he's got a bit of...
I
he's
guess,
good on the ball,
I guess
can bring it out.
He's probably hampered by the fact for right-sided centre-back, he's probably Stones/Walker based on what we've seen the last week. So White, in that comparison, would probably be third. He's not going to play right back in a 4 because then you even bring Trent and Trippier and James into the argument and stuff. So he wouldn't play at right back unless we lost a man and didn't have subs during a match. Could he play left-sided centre-back? Yeah, definitely.
He's probably one of the most comfortable on the ball.
I'm absolutely certain he could. And I think it's another one we should be looking at it and asking a question. I also think he could play in the middle of a 3. I think international football, you think back to that game at Brentford start of last season where Brentford really targeted him and stuff. You're not going to face that problem so much in international football, he says, thinking about Wales and Kiefer Moore in game 3, arguably. Yeah. But generally, you're not going to face that too much. So if it was me picking the squad, Ben White would be in. It's also worth saying, obviously, with Ben White, he can play midfield. Yeah. And we're really short in that area at the moment. Dyer could do a job there as well, but wouldn't be great anymore because his mobility he's had to adapt a lot over the last couple of years. Ben White could play in midfield if it came to it. I don't understand his exclusion. I think even worst case, like, could there be someone else suddenly we look at? I think if Maguire was to get injured suddenly and he doesn't fancy Tomori and Gay, I think the most likely thing, he'd go and look at Tyrone Mings again. He'll go back to what he knows. He'll go, I know Tyrone Mings, sod it. I'll go with him, and it's naturally left-footed, for example. Wing-back positions. So I think we can probably assume James, Trippier and Shaw will go.
James, Trippier, agreed. I think there's a lot of talk of Trippier playing on the left rather than the right as well.
Well, I think we know that he can do it.
He can, and actually sometimes, I mean, I'd rather Trippier than Shaw would start.
I think Luke Shaw actually did bar one really bad pass in the first half. I thought he did all right last night, considering he hasn't played that much. Yep. And the balance of the team looks a little bit better with him in it, which is no criticism of Saka, who I'll come on to in a bit, by the way. But I think Trips for the versatility goes in. Reece James also can cover right-sided centre-back, we know, because we've seen him play that position for Chelsea. I think Luke Shaw, it definitely goes now. Mm-hmm. Even if he doesn't play another minute for Manchester United between now and the World Cup, I think Southgate knows him, trusts him, will take him. Trent. I think Trent will be in the squad, but I don't know if he'll be used. I have no idea.
Yep.
I have no idea. I don't know how we can be in a position where, whatever you think of Trent, and most of us obviously rate him extremely highly, that he's not valued to be a substitute for England. To leave him out the squad last night, like not even on the bench. You want to change the system to back 4. You want some creativity from fullback. You're chasing a game. I mean, one of the flaws of Trent is some of the defensive stuff. We know, we've highlighted it. But then there was a lot of other defensive flaws in that England team last night. Yeah. So why not at least have the guy that's really creative from deep positions? So I think Trent will be in the squad. I think he's another one, and it does apply to Reece James as well, that in a worst case scenario, you could put him into a midfield. I think you'd have to change to a midfield 3, which is something I'd like England to do anyway. But I think Trent probably will go, but it wouldn't surprise us at this stage if he was left out, would it?
No, it wouldn't be a shock. But like you, I do think he will go. I think Trent will.
I think he'll be. I think because it's 26, he'll be in. I think if it was 23, he maybe wouldn't.
He would miss out.
Yeah. I think Ben Chilwell will be in the squad, but I don't know what to say about him.
I want him to be in the squad.
I don't get why we haven't seen him again. It's just questions about him all the time, about fitness and stuff. Yeah. That's alarming. And do you want to take that with you? I think the luxury, again, of the 26-man squad means you can take the luxury. And I don't think none of us really want to take Shaw as the only left-footed wing-back option.
Yeah, I would take Chilwell. But
I would take Chilwell. I mean, I think most of us would actually say, well, if Ben Chilwell's fully fit, I'd like Ben Chilwell to play. Yeah.
Yeah.
But he never got a minute in the Euros. We've hardly seen it.
Yeah. He just randomly pops up with Chelsea. He scores like 15 points in FPL and then pisses off for another 3 or 4 weeks.
For 5-6 weeks.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mystery as Ben Chilwell.
It'll be interesting to see how that develops with obviously Graham Potter now taking over Chelsea. I think he probably will go in, but I guess it depends what his fitness status is in 4 or 5 weeks' time. It's worth saying as well, where this is very different to obviously summer tournaments, Southgate's going to name his 26 and they're going to rock up on the Monday before the tournament. There isn't, I'll get a group of 30 together for 2 weeks and I'll narrow it down to 26. He's going to name the 26 and it's got to rock up, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm guessing as well that he may even have to name that 26 before the game week 16 Premier League games happen.
Right.
I'm guessing. Or what you can do, just call them up on the Sunday night and say, you're in, see you in the morning.
I think they'll know if they're in the 26.
Oh,
before.
maybe. Anyway, I think only alternative options in terms of fullbacks, again, I can't see. I've spoken about Ryan Sessegnon and Rico Henry, and my wish that one of them would have been looked at because of this left-sided problem and the fact that they're both suitable in the wing-back system for England. But again, I think if you had a real issue at wing-back, you're looking at James Justin of Leicester. Tyreek Mitchell of Crystal Palace is looked at, I think, primarily for a back four, and Kyle Walker-Peters at Southampton. These would be the guys that he'd go to in an injury crisis at the moment. Midfield, Rice, Bellingham and Henderson go, I think. Definites.
Agreed.
I think even if Jordan Henderson's 60% fit, he would take Jordan Henderson at the moment. I think the options in that midfield area are limited. I think those three are a lock. I think at the moment James Ward-Prowse will get in. I think James Ward-Prowse will get in very dependent on Calvin Phillips' fitness. I'm working on the assumption that he's maybe not going to be fit, and we've hardly seen Calvin Phillips in 2022. So I think Ward-Prowse in if Phillips doesn't make it. The options as alternatives if we have injuries in this area are really, really bad. So Conor Gallagher's been with the under-21s. He's basically the only other one Southgate's looked at, and you could make a case that he's attacking rather than
defensive.
You wouldn't want him to sit in front of the back four, would you? No.
Get himself sent off.
So really short in that area, which I think does mean if we were to talk about wild card last minute entries, I think there are two players that could make a late call if England have a real crisis in the midfield area. One is Harvey Elliott at Liverpool, who I think is another one probably should have had the call to have a look at here, I think. Even if they'd looked at him for a couple of days and went, off you go to the under-21s or something, just to have a look at him. He'd be the most likely, but again, he's not someone... If something happens, if we've got no Rice and Phillips, who are you sitting in front of that back four?
Yeah.
Like, honestly. And the only name I can think is Oliver Skipp. Is at least he's done the job for Tottenham and stuff. Oliver also, he hasn't played any Premier League football since January, and how much of a look-in is he going to get in the next month? But I don't know. If we've got no Rice or Phillips, I don't know what the answer is.
Yep.
I don't know where we go.
All-out attack.
Well, but
hoof it long and go all out.
We know it's not going to be.
No.
We know. I think in that scenario, it's more likely. Back to Ben White. I think
Ben White is holding midfield.
Yeah, I don't know what the major alternatives are. Can you think of anything?
No, you can play James Ward-Prowse there. Obviously, you can play Dean Henderson. Henderson.
It's not suitable. I promise you.
It's not ideal.
He's not press resistant, James Ward-Prowse.
Yeah,
you can't play it into him back to goal there.
We are scraping the barrel there, then. I do get it.
This is why it's not just a defensive problem. There is a midfield problem. And there's nothing wrong with Rice and Bellingham as a midfield too, by the way. I think Bellingham is restricting Rice. It's not Rice's fault. I think Declan Rice, unfortunately, has to play for England as an out-and-out anchor. I'm not moving. And just let Bellingham go. Because his stamina and his energy is phenomenal. The way he turns and links play, he always gets into the box. You don't want to... Unless Bellingham says, I need to breathe for 5 minutes, you go. Then they can work on that sort of thing. But generally, you don't want to be restricting Jude Bellingham. He's an absolute shoo-in to be in the team now, I think. There aren't alternatives in that area. I think in terms of...
Drop Mountain, maybe?
You could. I mean, I think one of the solutions... If it was me, personally, I think for Iran, in the first game, I don't really want to see England play with 3 centre-backs. I would like to see England play with Trent and Chilwell, arguably, as the 2 full-backs in a 4-3-3, and I'd drop Mount in with Bellingham, and Declan Rice plays as a real anchor. We let the full-backs go. We let the 2 8s go. We get the two wide players close to Harry. It all sounds easy on paper, but it's easier to do that sort of thing against Iran rather than some of the bigger nations where we're not going to have the ball so much. But I think Mount could play in a 2 with, say, Rice.
Yep.
I wouldn't be comfortable with it, though. I think in a 3, no problem. And that would free up Bellingham a little bit more as well. Mount will definitely go. Sterling will definitely go. Foden will definitely go. Saka will definitely go.
Agreed.
And I think you could look at that and say, well, that's the 4 wide positions, if you will, and the players that we all saw last night. I think Jack Grealish will go at the moment. Was obviously used late in it. I think with Jack, his underrated skill of being able to slow the tempo, keep the ball, win free kicks.
Yeah. Slow the game
so
down.
important,
It's
honestly.
unbelievable at that.
Yeah, and I think he's so well suited to this level of football. So Jack would definitely go for me, which would mean there's a cluster of players who would miss out. That includes Jared Bowen, Marcus Rashford, and Jadon Sancho. So this is what I mean. So people, new attacking player. You've potentially got those 3, maybe not going to go at the moment. Can you see him taking 6 players to go on top, like in terms of wide players? And admittedly, you've got Mount could fill into a midfield area. Saka, we know, can cover at wing back, for example. Looking at that, so do you think Bowen goes or not? I feel like he's one of the hardest ones to call.
His form's not good. I don't think he deserves to go on current form. But I think Gareth Southgate likes to go back to what he knows, and he's picked him in his last few squads. So I haven't watched the last couple of games in any detail. Did he get enough minutes to care, or he didn't play at all?
He wasn't in the squad at all last night. Didn't come on against.
Yeah, so
Italy.
He's had no minutes all of a sudden. Yeah, I don't think he'll go.
Does he get ahead of any of them 5 if you include Grealish for you?
No.
Like, would you pick him ahead of any of them?
No.
No, unfortunately not at the moment. I think Jared.
We don't play counter-attacking football that kind of getting him running.
We do in
behind.
the big games, but then even still, would you pick that then over Sterling, for example, or Saka?
Saka on the right.
I mean, Saka was so good when he came on last night.
I'd play Saka ahead of Bowen all day long.
Well, I'd play Saka ahead of Sterling, but it's worth saying England are going to play every 4 days in the summer. It doesn't have to be an exclusive. This is the best 11.
Yeah.
As I said in the Euros last summer, it's the team that finishes the tournament will be more important for England than the team that starts the tournament. Jesse Lingard's out of the picture now, I think, isn't he? Yeah. Emil Smith-Rowe, I think, would be out of the picture as well. He's going to struggle to get in the Arsenal team. He does have lingering injury problems. Obviously, Harry Kane will go.
You think?
Maybe, just about. And I guess we can only assume at the moment that Tammy Abraham has the nod over Ivan Toney. The fact that Abraham was in the squad on Friday night when Toney wasn't. They both were last night. Neither got used. Is he going to take uncapped Ivan Toney as Harry Kane's backup? I mean, it's probably not. So I think Abraham would have the nod at the moment for me.
Yeah. I don't think he'll take more than 2 strikers because I think he'll think that Sterling or Foden can play up top in emergency situations.
Well, and even that, I guess one thing would be a serious advantage to Rashford. Yeah, because I'd say over Bowen, if Rashford can get himself fit in the next months, if one of those 4 or 5 other wide players isn't fit, arguably you take Rashford knowing that he could play as a number 9. I would think.
Yeah, I think it's too late for Calvert-Lewin to find or Bamford to find fitness and form now. No. We're too close for that to be a risk.
But I think if you had a position where Toney and Abraham were not fit for whatever reason, I think he would revert to like Ollie Watkins.
Yeah.
He would just take that.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Rather than, like I said, if Solanke scores 12 goals in the next month. I can't see it.
No.
I can't see. I can only see in the midfield area where there's 1 or 2 names could suddenly break in just because we've got a real problem. By the way, like if we go into that tournament with like no Rice and Bellingham, I guess John Stones is another name that could play in midfield. Ironically,
doesn't fill you with the most excitement.
No,
I mean, there's some good players in there.
Like so many people's frustrations with England at the moment is you look at them attacking players and you go, "It's there, isn't it?" But then I was obviously watching the Italy game Friday night. And when we changed to a back 4 later in the game, looking at it, and the 3 behind Kane was Sterling, Foden and Grealish. And well, this could have been Man City's front 3 like 3 months ago, and now you've got Kane in front of it. Why does this still look shit? It shouldn't. So I think there's a frustration from so many people that Southgate does have the shackles on them somewhat. I can't argue against that. But for me, once you break past that attacking line, how good are we? Yes, we have some amazing right backs. We have a good 11, I think, subject to what people think shouldn't be at centre back. But I actually think we're short still. I think centre back, we're not elite. I think midfield area, if it's Rice and Bellingham as a two, that's great, but they're going to play certain teams. We play Spain, just going to chase the ball, I think, for example. So I think we're still short of the elite. That said, there's so much unpredictable going into this tournament. The form of all the top European nations that we said is not good, not just England. The winter tournament, the fact it's in Asia, the lack of preparation for teams. It might be that someone just lands in the last 16 quarter final and hits form at the right moment and wins it. I mean, it's beginning to look like, from thinking, oh, maybe there's only 4 or 5 teams can win it. It looks like it could end up being quite an open tournament.
Yep.
Which I think is exciting. Like I've thrown out like Switzerland and Serbia as 2 teams to keep an eye on, both in the same group, both hate each other, both in Brazil's group. And yet Brazil will certainly be one of the favourites for the tournament. Rightly so. They probably will go off as favourites now, Brazil, I should imagine.
Really interesting. Not long to go.
No, but let's get back to the bread and butter for a few weeks first.
Yeah, indeed. There's 7 weeks of Premier League football before the World Cup still to go. Obviously, jump down in the comments on YouTube or Twitter with your opinions. But, you know,
be nice.
Their opinions at the end of the day. None of us can second guess Southgate.
You're allowed to disagree.
Yeah, this is not a call for you to Southgate bash, because it's not going to help anyone's debate just doing that. But yeah, on YouTube, make sure you're subscribed if you are not already. Hit the like button and do the same wherever you might be listening to the audio. You'll get notified as soon as we put more content live. The schedule for the rest of the week, James?
Sky Fantasy Football tomorrow.
Yep.
Fan View on Nottingham Forest. Mark Southerns on Thursday. And Friday, not the deadline stream, because I've got to be at the Emirates Saturday lunchtime. So we're going to do a stream Friday night, and I'll release that as an audio as it's in advance of deadline as well.
Tidy. Listeners, stay safe. Look after yourselves. Ciao for now.
Thanks, everyone. Cue music, please, man child.